Hi. Welcome to this session on the threats in the evolving world of retail and manufacturing. My name is Ian Lowe, and I have been in the IT industry for 27 years, with experiences ranging from technology vendors to retail and manufacturing, and I even spent some time in the public sector, where I was the director of cybersecurity operations. Let's begin this session with the manufacturing industry. In 2019, the manufacturing sector entered the top 10 status as the 8th most targeted industry by cyber attackers. By 2020, it went up to the 2nd most targeted sector, with almost 300% increase in attacks. There are 4 main drivers for this increase. These are the rise of Industry 4.0. Opportunistic attacks on an industry that has been traditionally weaker in their security posture. The increased value of intellectual property. And an industry with less sophisticated users. Now let me elaborate on the significance of Industry 4.0. Whether you believe the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a major advancement in technology, or think it's an advertising buzzword, there's no doubt that an expansion in technology and interconnected devices and systems exist. Utilizing these advancements requires responsible implementation and the use of more advanced cybersecurity techniques. From a manufacturing point of view, Industry 4.0 streamlines processes with the interconnection of information technology, IT, and operational technology, OT. This expanded landscape brings new points of vulnerability and a variety of ways for hackers to target manufacturers. The main components of Industry 4.0 that affect the manufacturing industry include the Internet of Things, or IoT. IoT refers to objects embedded with the technology to communicate with devices across the Internet. Similar to IoT, machine-to-machine communication, or M2M, allows machines to communicate with one another, or computers without human intervention. Next is the increased reliance on the cloud. The ability to provide real-time information is essential for keeping up with the changing nature of the manufacturing industry and related supply chains. Utilizing IoT devices and M2M communication naturally leads to increased reliance on the cloud as well. As with every other industry, there is an increased use of AI, or artificial intelligence. This increased use of AI would naturally increase in data generation and collection. This is an area where traditional defenses against data exfiltration might not be sufficient. Data injection becomes a new threat vector as bad data can skew your AI engines. Next up is the concept of edge computing. Edge computing is a distributed computing paradigm that brings computation and data storage closer to the sources of data. With the increased amount of data sources and volume, this is important to improve response times and save bandwidth. 3D printing is one of the leading emerging technologies of Industry 4.0. The use and implementation of additive manufacturing, in combination with other technologies, is producing an evolution in the industry towards an intelligent production, where machines, autonomous, automatic, and intelligent systems and networks are able to exchange information and respond to the systems of production management. In addition, as a technology capable of turning a 3D design into a product without intervention, 3D printing has a fundamental role. The risk here is that your intellectual property like design are in digital forms that are highly targeted by hackers. Lastly, we have the introduction of digital twins. A digital twin can be defined, fundamentally, as an evolving digital profile of the historical and current behavior of a physical object or process that helps optimize business performance. The real power of this is that it can provide a near real-time comprehensive linkage between the physical and digital worlds. With the increasing complexity of designs, digital twins can help speed up experimentation without incurring high expenses to build life models. What is common across all these areas is the increased digital footprint that will expand the attack surface of the organization. Care needs to be taken when implementing any of these technologies. Now, let me move on to some sharing on the retail industry. According to a study conducted by TrustWave, 24% of all targeted attacks were focused on the retail industry. The retail industry is a treasure trove of very valuable data ranging from customer information to payment information. Sophos State of Ransomware report showed a major increase in ransomware attacks, rising from 44% in 2020 to 77% in 2021. There were 629 confirmed incidents across the industry with 241 confirmed data breach disclosures in 2021. Similar to the previous section, I would now talk about some of the development in the retail industry that has shifted the attack vectors. Firstly, one of the most difficult aspects of retail IT is the management of aging assets. Many of these machines are specialized hardware that were designed to fit into certain processes or workflow and not so easily replaced or upgraded. The way to manage an environment like this is not the same way you would manage an office with just PCs and servers. These aging equipment presents a problem for patching and security agents compatibility. Similar to any other industry, there is also a public cloud transformation going on in the retail industry. Many traditional point-of-sale systems vendors are increasingly offering some form of cloud-based design. As data insights becomes increasingly important, the use of the cloud to perform data processing makes it a natural progression for any organization. The next area is the explosion of smart retail technologies. We have the use of smart tags using RFID, smart carts that can weigh your purchases, smart cashiers that auto-scan your purchases. All these technologies improve the customer experience but bring an increased risk to the organization. Amazon Go launched the Unmanned Store to the front page of retail news. With the manpower crunch in retail, unmanned stores are getting extremely popular. Obviously, this brings in a lot of challenges and many new technologies. With the increased use of cameras, smart shelving, tracking beacons, and other evolving technologies, it is getting really hard to secure this brand new world. Most retailers are growing their online presence and business. With the pandemic driving a lot of buying behavior, e-commerce is bigger than ever before. The rise of the multitude of payment options have also increased the complexity in securing how we manage online payments. And lastly, as customers are getting more sophisticated and demanding a lot more personalization in offerings to them, the use of AI is an important evolution of the retail industry. Data needs to be collected on many buying behavior, and correlation of purchases across stores, family members, demographics, and so on are needed to give retailers an edge in this very competitive market. With the increased collection of data, there will also be an increased need on data privacy protection and automated audits of systems. Now that you have heard the challenges we face in the manufacturing and retail industries, you will be thinking, what can we do about it? So now let's get to specific areas and actions that can be taken to help improve your security posture. We start with the basics. Regardless of the industry you are in, there are some fundamental practices you must adopt. Next is malware. Malware defense are still important for majority of the organization's environment. All organizations are heavily dependent on information technologies to function, and that means there will be a lot of PCs and servers that need malware protection. This can be in the form of EDR or host IPS solutions. And finally, data breaches. We hear about massive data breaches in the news regularly, and with all the data protection laws around the world, this can result in financial penalty beyond the reputation, public trust, and embarrassment factor. Care must be taken to ensure data protection is in place regardless of the industry you are in. Now that we have the basics covered, we shall move to the main topic of the day: IoT security. With IoT, there are two layers to think about. First is the network protocol. Most people are familiar with common network protocols of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G. Many others will also be familiar with the likes of Zigbee and Z-Wave. But those are not the only protocols. There is the emergence of Thread, which is based on Zigbee but supports IPv6 and different security stack like password-based authentication with DTLS, datagram transport layer security. There is also LWM2M or lightweight machine-to-machine protocol and LoRaWAN, short for long-range wide area network. In terms of data protocol, most people would be familiar with HTTP or HTTPS, which is the standard for IT systems API connections. But beyond this, IoT devices use a wide spectrum of data protocol, like XMPP, or Extensible Messaging and Presence Protocol, that is popular with messaging applications like Google Hangout. There is the infamous MQTT, or Messaging Queue Telemetry Transport Protocol, which is tough to work with, as many vendors have different implementation of the standards. CoAP, or Constrained Application Protocol, is like a lightweight HTTP, designed for IoT and gaining popularity. DDS, or Data Distribution Service, is another scalable IoT protocol that enables high-quality communication in IoT. And lastly, Matter is the latest attempt to get an industry-accepted standard for smart device interoperability. This is noteworthy as it is backed by the biggest names in tech today. So for IoT, there are three main areas to pay attention to. Firstly, visibility. You can't protect what you don't know. You would find a way to ensure you are aware of all the sensors and devices you have in your network. Some of these devices might be in your environment but not on your network, for example, sensors of devices managed by external vendors. Do pay attention to these invisible devices. Next, think about segmentation. It is advisable to separate these IoT traffic from your IT traffic. There are two reasons for this. Firstly, IoT traffic can get very heavy depending on the number of sensors and type of data collected. Secondly, it is much harder to scan for malicious payload in IoT today, and thus you would want to minimize cross-infection. And lastly, patching. Unlike PCs and servers with a software-based operating system that we can patch with many off-the-shelf solutions, it is much harder to patch IoT devices. IoT devices usually have scaled-down operating systems, usually on firmware or even hardware that may not be able to be patched. So for IoT, I do suggest you explore the options of virtual patching and micro-patching into your patch management controls. The next major area I would cover is one of the biggest pain points for the manufacturing and retail sector. EOS, EOSL, and EOL products. These stand for end of sale, end of support life, and end of life. These can refer to both software and hardware. The first thing we need to do is isolate these systems as much as possible. As there are no patches even for disclosed vulnerabilities, they are often a favorite target for hackers. Therefore, it is important to make that as hard as possible to be accessed from the external world. The next thing you can try to do is virtualize as much of these systems as possible. Although not always possible, it would greatly help to move these systems to a virtualized environment for a few reasons. It would be easier to take snapshots and backup as they are usually fragile. And we can add in protection at the hypervisor level with SDN, or software-defined network, controls. Lastly, since there is no easy way to apply direct patch to the systems, think about using virtual patching at the network level to mitigate some of this risk. The last area I want to speak about is the area of IT and OT convergence. One of the big differences that the manufacturing and retail sector has is the use of a lot of specialized equipment that might fall into the OT world. Machines, refrigeration, integrated smart buildings, and so on. These equipment have more in common with the OT world in the use of PLC modules that might talk OT protocols like Modbus, Profibus, or Profinet. We need to find a way to secure this traffic. Similar to visibility, we need to be able to monitor these devices real-time or at least near-time. Many operation data is time-sensitive, and the ability to not only monitor, but correlate the data with other IT systems is essential to improving your security postures. Attacks on these systems are usually employing different attack vendors than your typical IT systems. Many are from service technicians plugging in infected USB devices, the most common infection for OT systems. Physical controls are just as important, as well as scanning support tools used by service personnel. Now that you have heard some of the things you should be doing, let me share some specific stories on things that I have experienced. Dealing with point-of-sales terminal is never easy. There are many makes and models on the market today. While there are some based on Linux and even Android, majority of POS terminals are based on Microsoft Windows. As with many Windows systems, there are a lot of malware in the wild targeting Windows-based POS. Here are some of them. These Windows-based POS are usually classified into two categories: POS with embedded Windows, or POS on Windows. Many older POS are deployed on Windows 7 with a difficult upgrade path. Some of these POS only work with certain vendors for malware protection, and upgrades to these agents are not always easy to do. Next, Let's talk about non-standard networks. Many factories are located in areas out of the city for lower-cost real estate. The challenge here is the limited availability for fixed-line networks. Similarly for retail pop-up stores or stores in remote locations. The solution for these stores are usually some form of wireless network like LTE or 5G. To best manage these networks, it is best to put an SD-WAN overlay so that the network medium can be independent of your controls. In some cases it might even be using ADSL over copper, but with SD-WAN you can simplify your security deployment. The other problem I have faced are the varied communication for same family of solutions. For example, in the retail world today, it is almost impossible to manage a large store without electronic shelf labels. ESLs are dynamic and can be mass updated through a central console or changed individually using a handheld device. The major vendors of ESL solutions use either the RFCC 2500 chip or infrared signals, and handhelds usually use Bluetooth to communicate with the labels. Security of these devices are equally important, as imagine the chaos if the prices were changed by a hacker across the store. In both manufacturing and retail, there is the common supply chain technology challenges. Many warehouses or distribution centers rely on warehouse management system with a variety of handheld scanners. These scanners usually support code 128 or QR code formats. One of the challenge I have seen is the abuse of the profile programming capability of code 128 barcodes. What this is a code that can change the config of the device without a host computer. This change can include the switching of the wireless network for the attacker to gain an entry point. Many of these devices are Android-based but are not fully Android compliant, thus security solutions may not work and have to be tested well. In conclusion, I would like to recap the recommended approach to take as you start on securing this environment. Before you can start with protection, you need to have visibility. When I talk about visibility, it needs both the inside-out, or network discovery, and also outside-in, internet-based discovery. As I mentioned before, there might be devices in your environment that may not be on your network. After you know the devices, is to gain clarity on their risk. Not all IoT devices share the same level of risk. Do work out some classification and priority of these devices. After you have established the device inventory and risk levels, you need to look at how you would protect these devices. The thing to note is that you not only have to protect the devices from external sources, but also from each other. With so many IoT devices in the environment, it is important to not any infection be distributed through your IoT network. And lastly, you need to keep constant watch on your protection. Monitoring is vital to ensure that new threats are covered, and also new vulnerabilities are discovered in a timely manner. Do ensure that you have established an active and good vulnerability scanning control and also external threat intel to help enrich your scanning results. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, and do look out for more industry tech talks from me in the future. Thank you.